It's great to be here. I'm glad you could all make it. I'm going to talk for maybe a smidgen over 9 minutes. I think I've got 11 minutes of content on courageous decisions and the psychology behind them. Particularly, I'm going to talk about, if we can, I've got my little clicker here. I'm going to talk about the psychology of courageous decisions, how we can make them better, but primarily why we make them in the first place. So I hope you enjoy the next 9 or so minutes. Now, I want to start by opening on a story. Start my presentation with a story, which is, imagine that you are on the summit of Everest. In fact, you're 200 meters below the summit. And this is a story where it's 1996. Hang on. It's 1996. You're 200 meters below the summit. And an expedition is being led by a guy called Rob Hall, a New Zealander who's climbed Everest a number of times. He's leading a paid group of clients up towards the summit. And in this situation, he sets a rule, which is that we're going to summit tomorrow. When you wake up, we're going to get up early at 3 a.m. And if we're not at the summit by 2 p.m., you have to turn back. And I'm going to pause on that story. We're going to come back to it. I'm going to pause while we look at some analogies for what's going on the mountain and what it might mean, what you can learn for your business around courageous decisions. And I think the first thing we would note, it's an easy analogy to go from climbing mountains and leading people up mountains to saying, as a CEO, your job is to lead people, often a disparate rabble of people, if you like, towards and up goals and up mountains they never would have thought they could achieve themselves, and do it quicker than your competitors. And also, I think as CEOs and owners of organizations, there's no prizes for maintaining the same course. If you're employed as a new CEO in a company, you want to change. You're only going to be remembered if you do something creative, innovative, transformational. So that's a bit like being on the top of the mountain as well. But it turns out that the average company only makes 2.5 decisions a year that affect more than 10% of their revenue. These are the big decisions. And what I want to do today is talk about not only the courage that's needed to make them, but also I want to go into specifically gut feel and the role of how your guts can help you or hinder you make these courageous decisions. And who we're going to meet is, we're going to meet a guy called Kim Jong-il, who you may remember, he's now deceased, was the leader of North Korea for many years until he passed to his son. And he was famous for making gut feel decisions. If you Google him, you'll find decisions such as this. This is my favorite. In 2006, he was facing a national food crisis. So what does he do? He meets a guy from Germany who breeds giant rabbits that are the size of Alsatian dogs. And he says, right, maybe I could solve my national food crisis by importing giant rabbits and breeding them. Breeding program, feed everyone, no problem, right? It's a pretty impulsive decision, kind of gut feel based. But it goes one step further in that a few months later, the rabbits are in the country and it turns up it's birthday, it's Kim Jong-il's birthday. And he decides impulsively again to eat them all in the banquet for his birthday. A really impulsive decision, two impulsive decisions from Kim Jong-il. And some of us will know people that we've worked for or maybe suspect that we make gut feel decisions like that sometimes. Here's another guy called William Smithberg, who makes gut feel decisions in business. He was the CEO of the Quaker Company, and in the early 80s, he bought Gatorade just because he liked the taste of it, and he turned it from a $220 million company into a $2 billion company in a few years through cost reduction of manufacturing, through aggressive marketing, and through increased distribution. And here, the quality of his decision was really bad, but the outcome was really good. And that's often something you need to watch out for, is often bad decision-making processes will get lucky. But what happened later is that based on the confidence from this acquisition, he was faced with the opportunity to buy Snapple. And he bought that for $2 billion. And no one in the Quaker Company even questioned it. They didn't really do their due diligence because they said, this guy's got the gut feel. So he bought the brand, and it was a disaster. He sold it 6 years later for $300 million, making a $1.7 billion loss. And this again shows, this time he didn't get lucky. They couldn't replicate the marketing, manufacturing, distribution successes for Gatorade. So he really only his gut feel only had a 50% success rate, and he got fired. Interestingly though, we talk about tops of mountains and dictators and big CEOs. Decision making is driven very often by your emotions. In fact, every decision we make is driven by emotions. Consider this particular product here, and I want to tell you a story about a woman in the UK who had a car crash and received brain damage. Sad story. And her brain damage was such that she could not feel emotions. And you might think that the number one impact of that was in her relationships, but no, it was actually going shopping. Because she had no emotions, she could not make a choice between a different brand of baked beans and Heinz. She had no emotions, she had no relation to the category. She could only make decisions by comparing the salt content or the price per bean. Right? So making decisions is actually impossible without emotions. And this woman demonstrated it. So I want to tell you quickly, if you want to make courageous decisions, what can you do about this? For me, if I hear, my gut feel comes into play. If I hear an idea, the hairs on the back of my neck go up if I like it, much like the whiskers on a cat, if you like. And for you, if you get presented an idea in a meeting, you will often have a visceral reaction. If you don't like it, your gut will literally sink. And if you do like it, maybe the hairs on the back of your neck raise. And the problem with gut feel is that we actually hide it. We don't acknowledge it. We quickly, our gut feel says, sink, and we go, right, I'm going to find some logical reasons to post-rationalize that. And we don't even know we're doing it. But the quality of our conversations is worse because we hide this gut feel and we don't accept it. So the first step to being a courageous decision maker is actually to accept and celebrate your gut feel and then move on from it. The other thing with gut feel is it's not that reliable. It's only reliable in situations where you've got a lot of experience and you get rapid feedback from your decisions. And so if someone does present, say, a marketing idea to you for your business, if you say, no, I don't like it because of your gut feel, and it doesn't get made, you're actually never going to get the feedback whether you were right or wrong because the ad didn't get made. And if you say, yeah, I like it, and it gets made, and it tanks and doesn't do very well, you'll probably say, actually, that was the agency's fault. Anyway, so you don't necessarily, it's hard to learn gut feel, right? So, but one thing you can do about it is, as I said, you've got to manage your heart and your head in these courageous decisions. So what Edward de Bono says that I subscribe to is that with your team, when you're making big decisions, ask them to actually write down their gut feel. Don't rationalize it, just write it down and then share. The reason you write it down is that you don't want people to influence one after another, right? So you write it down so you're not influenced by each other. And just share how you feel about this idea. And then move on. So everyone's gut feel is stated, and then you get back to the facts. So that's the first thing you can do. The second thing you can do is happened at Intel, and it's called What Would My Successor Do? So in the 90s, Intel was facing a threat from Japanese manufacturers who were making memory chips much cheaper through their lean manufacturing, etc. And the two founders were sat in an office one day, and they said, you know what, we've got all this data, but what would someone do if they came in fresh as a new CEO? Not us, but someone new. And they immediately went, look, if they had this data in front of them about where our share is going, they would absolutely exit the memory chip market and move into this fast-growing microprocessor market. And that's what they did. And having that distance, if you like, of stepping to the side and saying, what would my successor do, gave them the power to solve that problem and remove their emotions from that equation. So back on Everest, the mountaineers are heading towards the summit. They've got a 2 p.m. turnaround time. And by 2 p.m., only 2 people have reached the summit. But the leader, Rob Hall, actually allows people to keep going up till 4 p.m. And then, as they're coming down too late, it's getting dark, a storm comes in unexpectedly, and 5 people died on the mountain that night through frostbite, losing their way, and falling over the edge, and all sorts of awful things. A movie's been written about it, or a book and a movie. But I want to tell you quickly what happened with the decision-making there. 3 issues. Number 1 is called the sunk cost effect, where they were so close, after so much work and so much money to get so close to the summit, you're literally 200 meters away, you're not going to turn around. And you need to watch out for this sunk cost effect in your business so that you're very clear that you don't throw good money after bad. And that's a common psychological problem, the sunk cost effect. You've invested money and time. The second issue was that over the acclimatization and climbing periods, they'd created a culture in this group where no one really challenged the leader. So no one, when he kept on allowing people up till 4 o'clock against his very own rule, no one challenged him. Again, I say to you, in your businesses, to make courageous decisions, you've got to have the courage to have people around you who are going to call you and be honest with you. Otherwise, you've only got one point of view in your business. So have people around you that are going to challenge you. I think, how does this relate to courage directly? It is to say there's a very fine line between courageous decisions and foolish decisions. And I would actually, having thought about this a lot over the last few days, I would say to you that you don't actually want to make courageous decisions. You want to make decisions that look courageous from on the outside, but you have reduced the risk in them, so they actually feel quite sensible on the inside. And your job as a leader is actually, if you feel like you need to be courageous, it's telling you a signal that there's risk, there's fear, there are unknowns, and you need to reduce that before you can then make a sensible decision, even if it looks like the most courageous decision in the world on the outside. In the inside, the team and yourself, I advise you, if you're making a courageous decision, think twice and make it sensible first. So I want to end by saying, courage doesn't come on its own. It comes in a package. And I quite like this package of 3. Give me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change is important for you. The courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I would say to you, wisdom is a really important partner with courage in particular, so you don't make gut feel decisions that go wrong. I will hopefully meet a bunch of you afterwards. Come and have a chat. I've put up my Twitter handle here if you want to follow me for I talk about the psychology of decision making all the time. And that's my hopefully 11 or 9 to 11 minutes up. So thank you very much.